Like they thankfully introduced me, I don't have to introduce myself. I'm Vinaya. We're both agile coaches from Amdocs, and we are here today to share our perspectives of continuous integration at scale. Now, what do we mean by this? Basically, Amdocs, the delivery organization in which we are operating, it's really huge. Legacy code, traditional organization, hierarchies, all of the scalability challenges that you can have in a big enterprise, we have those. And over here, we have started our continuous integration journey a couple of years ago. And there are things we've learned along the way which we hope we can share with you and will also be useful for you. You can take it back to your organizations as well. So that's what the session is about. It's like an experience report, but with a few tips and tricks thrown in, which hopefully you'll be able to take back to your organization. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll start. So I just want to introduce briefly our organization in a bit more detail. So we are part of what is called as the Amdocs Delivery CTO organization. The main goal or the purpose of this organization is to bring to Amdocs delivery the latest in methodologies, the latest in tools, practices from the industry. And Amdocs is currently the #1 in telecom software, and to make sure that it will continue to remain #1. So we try to bring, always look forward, few years forward, not just the next, but try to think much beyond. So this is where we come from. The group is comprised of several people which bring different and varied expertise. People like Vinaya who are change management. Then there are the tools teams who bring a lot of experience on the DevOps tools, technologies around that, Dockers and so on. We'll talk about that a bit later. And also agile process management, scaled agile framework and so on. So the group comprises several people, several experts who work together to take Amdocs to the next level of delivery excellence.
So I think maybe it's important for us to set the context a little better so that we can all appreciate the scale and the complexities that we operate with, and also the space in which Amdocs itself operates. So if we could just go to the next slide. So basically, like I said, we are an old organization. We have more than 30 years of experience. We're mostly in the telecom billing, BSS, OSS space. So a lot of veterans in the organization, a lot of expertise in the organization, but also a very old organization, a lot of legacy. We also work with a lot of telco customers spread across the world. So we have a lot of tier 1 customers like AT&T, Bell, T-Mobile in North America. In Europe and Middle East, Africa, etc., we have TSA, we have Vodafone affiliates, etc. Closer home, Asia Pacific region, we have Singtel, Globe. These are all really big mega players in the telco space, and many of them are our customers. So a lot of mission critical systems are being operated by us. We have set the bar for excellence pretty high. We've been quite successful, especially in our delivery organization. We're talking about the traditional iron triangle of scope, budget, timeline management. We've been really good. But now our definition of success is slowly changing. The conversation is moving more to value delivery, customer delight, continuous improvement, and things like this. So our bar for success is quite high, but the definition of success itself is evolving. We are a lot of people working together. The overall Amdocs company is more than 20,000 people spread across, again, various sites. We have presence in Brazil, Mexico, Chile, UK, Israel, Cyprus, India, Philippines. So we really are a very distributed team, which of course comes with its own challenges as well as benefits, to be honest. Yeah? Our delivery organization is 5,000 plus. We have a lot of projects running in parallel. More than 120 projects running in parallel in the last year. And again, it comes with its own challenges of resource management, about prioritization, managing WIP, etc. So some of the projects that we put into production, several customers. So a lot of things going live all the time as far as the delivery organization is concerned.
Okay, so we will talk more on the projects in Amdocs now. This is mainly the delivery projects, and we want to talk about scale, because one of the things we experienced after now going to several conferences is the scale at which we are operating, especially an agile operation, is not very commonly seen. So we have seen people implementing agile when they say, okay, a scale means 20 teams, scale means 15 teams, or maybe 25 teams. This is an operation that we are running. So I want to ask you first, what does scale mean to you? What does a scale, a large scale enterprise would mean to you? So for us, scale means, as Vinaya was saying, our development centers are truly global. We have main centers in India and Israel, but there are additional centers in Cyprus, in Brazil, in Mexico, Philippines, and so on. And Amdocs does not operate in a model where projects are given to one center and they do end-to-end. But we operate in a model where the best of the people that is required for that project, regardless of the global location that they have, will be part of that project. So which means that any project will be globally distributed to at least 2 or 3 centers. And this introduces a lot of complexity. Second is, which is a key differentiator, is we are not dealing with product development, we are not dealing with ongoing projects. What we are dealing is with large scale mega transformations, which mean, take an example of Vodafone India. Vodafone India moves from a single billing system to a new Amdocs billing system. That is a transformation which takes years, traditionally, 2 years. It is a very complex, it cannot be done partially. You would not like a bill where only half of the stuff is there. You would like a bill which is as, for the end consumer, the bill must be as same as it was earlier, and everything should be there. So these are very large projects which are multi-year, multi-million-dollar contracts, a very fixed bid, and all those kind of constraints that a very traditional operation introduces.
And some of the telcos that we work with have up to 150 million users, etc., active users. So they're very, you can't really impact such a big group. It can really break the telco's backbone.
Right, and all of these are mission critical applications. There is no room for failure, and also because of the regulatory framework. Example, in India, like we have TRAI, which governs how these telcos will operate, and any mistakes have penalties against them, and so on. And so those penalties are exposed to us. Last but not the least, what we have, and we will not talk about it today in detail because the subject is continuous integration, is we are operating in an environment of scaled agile framework. If you have heard about this thing, so we have a scaled agile framework implementation. So we operate with multiple release trains in parallel and so on. Just to give a glimpse of it, for a typical project, you would have trains. Overall size of the Scrum teams would be in the range of 20 to 30 for a single project. And like this, we have several projects going in parallel. So every project will have 20 to 30 Scrum teams, and there are projects like AT&T which could have much more, because these are much bigger operations. Okay, so going into details of our environment and to see if the constraints and how we address them. So this is an example of our product stack. So it's not a single product that we are implementing. The product stack is multiple. So each of those boxes that you see here are sometimes one or actually several products, and it's called as the Amdocs Customer Experience System. And so a customer will typically take several of these products, and which means we go through the integration and the portfolio management and all of these things. And our continuous integration needs to operate across, not each product in isolation, because there is no value for the end customer. Even though we may build the product individually, for the end customer, the value comes from the portfolio. So our continuous integration implementation needs to cater to the value delivery across all of these products, whatever is implemented with the customer. And that is where, because we could easily deliver each of these products individually successfully, but then the integration time towards on the customer side will be much longer. And to solve many of those challenges, we introduced continuous integration across these products. So typical challenges that we faced when we started, our journey started almost on the CI side about 4 years back. So since we are in a service delivery environment and not product development, it means that we are constrained a lot by the customer. So there are fixed bid projects, the customer is not agile most of the time, there are regulatory requirements and all of that. So it is a very different game when you are in service delivery compared to when you are in product development. As one of the speakers was saying in the morning, on the product backlog, if you are an internal customer, you have a lot of influence. In our case, even on the product backlog, you have very limited influence because the customer is deciding everything, and you cannot really say that you must operate at this pace. Now we are agile. We want you to work with us every month. They don't work that way. They don't even understand agile. Now they do, but when we started, nobody understood agile. So the customer is typically waterfall mindset, and they operate in a mentality, this is a service delivery project. You have got a contract, go build something, deliver, don't bother me. So this is how the customers are operating. These are not engaged customers to that level, as you know, a typical agile environment would expect. They are operating in a very contractual manner. Second, as we talked, because this is an implementation, any single project will be multi-product, multi-team. There are a lot of integration challenges, which the CI helped us to solve. Now, as Vinaya mentioned, we are a very organization which has been around for quite some time, and which means that we had a lot of homegrown systems. So one of our challenges when we started on the continuous integration journey was that we had a source control system which was built in-house, which was good at one point of time. It was great. It served its purpose. It helped us to achieve a lot of things, but it had limitations in terms of allowing us to do faster deliveries. An example of that, the source control system, if two developers are working on a single file, it was necessary that the file will be locked, and which will mean that they cannot work parallelly. They need to coordinate, and one person will release the file, and they need to manage a lot of merges and all of that. Now, changing this was not trivial. We moved to a newer system. We will talk about it, but because all our code base was on that, and it cannot be just magically ported to a new version control system. So we had our experience in this. Another thing was that as there was a multiple, if you're working in a multi-product environment, the code, each developer belongs to only one product. So the code works on his machine, but when it goes to integration on an integrated environment, it doesn't work because of the integration challenges and so on. So we faced a lot of challenge on that, how to make sure that we will solve all those defects and all that integration hell when the code is starting to be integrated from my machine to the integrated portfolio suite. Automation, because typically when you start your CI journey, and especially in an enterprise, you have very typical automation, which is mainly on the functional side, that to GUI. So we were using tools like QTP and so on. We hardly had any unit test automation. Also because many of the products that we had a base of C and C++ and so on, and it is a bit much more harder to do on a test, unit test level automation in that. And we had a cultural issue. All of this, always there is a cultural issue that because it is a large organization and because there are several units involved and so on, everybody is reinventing the wheel. Everybody has tools of their own for the same purpose. The standardization is less and so on. And all of this, what it resulted in is that the build which was there was typically taking days, sometimes weeks. And for now, when we look at it, it seems very absurd. But yes, it was taking weeks sometimes to just compile, and then another probably few days to do sanity or test, certify that this is basic stuff is working on it. I'm not talking about regression. That basic stuff is going to work, and it is a candidate for shipping. So this is where we started when we started our journey 4 years back.
You have cultural issues at play, you have process challenges, etc. And we had some of those as well. I think the large transformation projects Rishi already spoke about, like you're taking a big telco with a live system in production and replacing it practically overnight. It comes with its own challenges, but also the multi-vendor environment that we work with. One of the examples, for example, in Singtel in the Asia Pacific region, we are talking about 450 interfaces with up to 70 different vendors. This is the kind of integration that we were trying to do outside of the Amdocs suite. So this, of course, necessitates some amount of big, heavy upfront planning. We have date-based plans. Our program plans are huge. When we are the prime system integrator, we are able to influence it a little better. But when we are not, over there, it's even more tough working with these various vendors. So a lot of date-based plans, a lot of new artifacts get introduced because of these kind of challenges. So we used to have give, get trackers, etc. When do I need to give an API to my vendor? When will I get my files from them? So the general operating environment built a big monster of a process around it, but we couldn't live without it either, because that was the kind of environment that we were working with. In addition to the process challenges, the people challenges that we had in terms of culture and the way we were organized, etc. So given that we had this big suite of products, we have a lot of super specialization. So each of these products are quite complex, as you can imagine. These are large-scale enterprise projects. So for a person to join Amdocs and become even productive in a single product is a matter of months. It's not something, all the T-shaped skills, the generalists, etc., are much more challenging in this kind of a product and large-scale environment than what we would generally tend to believe. So a lot of super specialization, people are really good at specific single products, and sometimes even they are specialized in modules within particular products. So that actually led to an organization structure of competency centers. So people belong to competency centers. That is where their elegance is. That is where their HR reporting is, etc. And that in itself, of course, comes with some benefits, like knowledge ramp up is good, access to experts is really good. But on the other hand, it creates a lot of silos. Integration becomes more deferred and it becomes more tough. And of course, we didn't really have Scrum teams at the time that we started with our CI journey. Over time, now we are doing Scrum and SAFe, etc. So some things we've overcome. But largely, this is the kind of environment that we started. Yes?
Okay. So before we get into what we did and changes we did to really achieve some of these things, we just wanted to highlight what we achieved so far in the last around 3.5 to 4 years of our journey. One, the build time, which we said was days and weeks many times, so this is the average actually, is now few hours. Actually, it is not even 4 hours, it is less than 2 hours. If it is, and this is for the same suit, and actually advanced versions of these suits, which means there is more complexity, there are more products in, and so on. So what would take us days earlier is now taking us a few hours. Our goal is to have it in less than an hour, by the end of 2017 or so on. Earlier we could, because the build used to take so much time, we could do it only once a few weeks. So only once in 3 weeks, you could actually, think of running a build. Whereas now, there is a standard build every night, and the CI builds run on check-in. So the full swap, what we call as the full swap or the software package kind of build, is running every night, and the CI build is running on check-in. So compilation is no longer a blocker. So earlier, earlier a lot of time was spent in compilation and so on, but now compilation is no longer, it's a non-issue. We don't discuss about it, because it is handled on the CI itself, the compilation part. What this has already given us is the ability to deliver software to UAT monthly. Now you may wonder, especially in an agile conference, whether monthly delivering once to the customer in a month is really long. It is long. If you have worked in this kind of environment, you will know it takes many time for most players 3 months or 4 months to deliver to the customer. Now and many times we are not able to deliver much faster. Actually, we can deliver much faster as well, but the customers don't have the appetite to take it that fast. The customers would prefer once a month, or if they are really aggressive, once every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, because these are mission critical systems. Nobody wants to touch them as of now, every day and things like that. There is a lot of change control procedures around this and so on, because there are multiple vendors involved. As we said, it is not only you going live, it is several vendors going live. So, but now we already have the capability, wherever a customer will demand, to deliver monthly to UAT and then further to production. One thing which I want to highlight is something called as, we built as internally called as environment as a service. So as I mentioned earlier, we had a challenge of code not working from my machine to the machine where it is integrated and tested. Now, this was happening because the developers were testing only on their product. So where the developer is compiling the code and checking in whatever, and then testing his changes on a machine where there is only CRM, or there is only billing, or there is only ordering. And when it goes to the integrated portfolio machine where everything is integrated, it is not working. So the way we solved it is we created an environment where each developer gets a full integrated stack to run, to test. So every developer now does not get only a CRM environment to test, but an environment which has the full suite, which means that even though he may not use the other products, he's not making changes in those other products, his software is always tested integratively at the Scrum team level. Now, this is a game changer because now the integration is happening much earlier from the developer perspective. It requires a lot of effort to do because manually you cannot do it. Why it was not done earlier? Because to build such kind of an environment, an integrated environment with all of these things is a big manual effort. It was solved by technologies like cloning and so on. So we have automated scripts. There is a process of creating images or automatically after the swap is run nightly. So after the nightly build is run and it is passes some sanity, automated sanity, what is happening is an automatic image is getting created, which on a click of a button can be deployed to the developer machines, the developer test environments. It takes about 20 minutes for the developer to get a latest copy of the entire integrated suite. Now this was a game changer for us, and this is what we solved it, because this time 20 minutes from an earlier time of couple of days or 3 days sometime after stability was a game changer, because now what it meant was that I as a developer am always working and testing on the latest version of the software. I'm not delayed, so I'm always updated. I'm not just on the code base, but of my code base, but everybody else's also. So if somebody changes a particular API in other application which I'm going to be impacting or being impacted upon, I will know immediately. So this is a key game changer, and I think anybody who is operating in this kind of an environment and aspires to have a good CI must work on this aspect. And now we are going to extend it further with using Dockers and those kind of technologies.
And then suddenly she's coming and showing all these lovely metrics, etc. So let's see how we really got here. It was a really long journey. Like Rishi said, we started on it almost 4 years ago. And today we've reached a certain level of maturity. We're not completely there yet for sure. We are continuing to evolve. But we did several things on several fronts to get to where we are today. One of the first things we started with is that we set up a maturity model. Now, in Amdocs delivery, we believe a lot in the maturity approach, or even the Shuhari thinking, where you start with doing things by the book and then gradually you improvise. So we didn't really know what to start with in the beginning, so we learned a lot from the industry. There's some really good models out there, so you can look for those as well. So we built our own maturity model, something that works for us, and this is basically like a guiding roadmap for us. We understand that there will be certain things we must target first, and those are very basic things, and gradually we'll evolve to a much higher level of maturity. And this is something that also changes. It is not a static map for us for sure, because as we try things out, we realize some of the things are not for us, or something else is going to work better for us. Also, the industry is constantly changing, so we're learning constantly from there. So we have our own maturity model, which we use to guide our overall implementation. So
I want to add one thing in this. It is important to have such kind of a maturity model internally for a few reasons. One of the key reasons is visualization. Such kind of a visualization helps you sell it to management, senior management from whose support you need for the investments, because many of these require huge investments in technology, in licenses, in people, in trainings, and so on. So for them to really comprehend, it is a big change, but for them to really comprehend that change and see that it is moving forward. Such kind of a visualization helps. So when you start, you will have some items which are green, everything else is red. As you are moving forward, it starts becoming yellow and green and so on. So it helps guide the entire transformation program. Okay. So when we started to modernize, as we called it, what we did is we painted a very basic picture of what we want to achieve. So what we wanted to do is we wanted the ability that when a developer commits code, he or she should get feedback about that in less than half an hour, or less than an hour. Earlier it was much longer. So we started with the basic stuff. So we said, okay, we have to check in, and it should go to a version control system. Now our version control system was not the best. We will talk about it. So we needed changes on version control. We went for a lot of open source technologies on the CI server and so on. So we started to work on this, and we will see on the next slide what are the specific items we did.
I just want to add one thing over here. I think it was a big shift for us in the way of thinking. This picture is a slight misrepresentation, I would say. Really what it is that the developer was smack in the middle of the strategy for this whole big program that we were driving. And it was the first few times that we were actually thinking of the developer as the center of our Amdocs universe. I think that was a big mind shift
Right.
In our leadership as well.
So as I said, one of the first things we needed to change was we needed to adopt a modern version control system, which would bring us the benefits of that. So we went for Perforce. We changed our traditional system to Perforce. It was a big change. It took us some effort to upgrade our scripts and all of that. It involved a lot of Mavenizing. So we moved from our in-house scripts and Ant and all of these things to Maven. Maven helped us a lot in the modularization, a lot in simplifying stuff, in standardizing things. Because earlier, you see, there is this whole portfolio suite, and everybody is operating each of these suite, each of those blocks that you saw earlier, probably is a few hundred people. So there are all these. Everybody has their own standards of how they operate and so on, and so Maven helped us to standardize how the builds are happening across products and so on, and then it became easier for the developers also to later maintain it. One of the big changes was earlier we had infrastructure teams who were maintaining all these build scripts and the automation around it and so on. Now with the newer stack, that responsibility shifted to the developers. The developers are the ones who are going to maintain those kind of stuff. Because if they are going to make a certain change in a library or adding a new library or something, they need to add the relevant changes to it so that it gets built. They need to handle the dependency management and so on. That responsibility was shifted to development, which was earlier handled by infrastructure teams.
And I think it was also a game changer for the infrastructure teams, because earlier they were doing all these manual, repetitive, boring stuff. Now they are working on much cooler technology. They're doing a more futuristic stuff, building frameworks, making us really go faster than what we are today. So I think it's also been something good for our infra teams,
Right.
not only for the developers.
Right. So as the developers were handling the more routine and ongoing stuff, infra started to become more like DevOps teams, where they are handling how to go things, how will things move fast and so on. We adopted Nexus for the artifact management. It's almost a standard, I think, Nexus. It helps us. It helped us to do versioning and all of this stuff. What we already talked about is we spent a lot of effort and got a lot of success by the environment cloning. This ability to really deploy a portfolio integrated build in a matter of minutes to the environments, to the machines, gave us this amazing ability to work on the latest software and all of these things. One more thing I would like to highlight here is the test automation. Now, we were really operating with a very traditional testing approach, which means there was the major focus of the testing was catching defects later on, which means in system test, in acceptance testing, and so on. And the bulk of it, almost I would say 95% of it, was manual testing. There were hundreds of people doing regression, doing certifying features, and so on. Now this was, of course, very long feedback cycles. When you start to work in iterations, and we are using the scaled model, scaled agile framework model, so we have program increments. So it is difficult for these people to keep up, because developers are now releasing builds every few days, and it is difficult for them to, they would get a very short time to certify, and it is never enough. So we needed to move testing much more earlier to the development, which means that the development needs to do a lot more automation. And so we started to look at what we call as inverting the test pyramid, which means a lot of focus of testing shifted to the UT, which is, and we worked with, for the Java components, it was relatively easier because JUnit is pretty evolved. For the C and C++, it still is a challenge. I would not say that this challenge is fully solved, because the products have been written long back. They would need a lot of refactoring, and since it is a service delivery environment, you cannot estimate refactoring into the project cost, because the customer is never going to pay for it. So you have to do it gradually over a period of time, and so on. So all of this we started to focus. So lot more focus on unit test automation, and also looking at how we can do integration automation, and so on. Another big change that we did was we started to see how we can shift the responsibility of testing to development. So earlier we had separate groups for development and quality assurance. So where development would build, and then they would throw things to system test or acceptance, and then they would certify, and so on. Now what we did is that a lot more responsibility of testing is moving to Scrum teams directly, which means that developers are certifying code which goes to acceptance testing. Many times, if it is not really necessary, there is no need for system test, because of course all of the CI and other things also contribute to it. But this whole shift, and this cultural thing to shift the testing responsibility to development, it's a big change in terms of getting the developers ready. It involved initially moving the testers to the Scrum teams, and so some testers were moved to the Scrum teams, and so the Scrum team is taking full responsibility end to end, and trying to produce software which is fully shippable. Of course, we did a lot of work on simplifying the build orders. That is where we reduced the time to build, because earlier the way it was built, it was managing many dependencies and so on, and a combination of Nexus, Maven, and all of this, and doing builds in a very modular manner helped us to bring down the time from a few days to few hours.
They were happening against this backdrop of a huge agile implementation, where we started with Scrum and eventually we started using the SAFe model. So a lot of things that we did over there were complementing the CI implementation, and vice versa, of course. So some of the things we did in terms of simplifying and making our processes lighter is one, the first thing we targeted was the documentation. So in general, given traditional organizations, we had some heavy detailed design documents, etc., that developers were maintaining, and we really simplified that to a great extent. Lean and visual documentation. So now if a group of developers comes to a room and they're doing a whiteboarding for a design, a picture of that is going to suffice as a detailed design document for simpler features. So it was a real cultural shift, and we successfully made this big change, and it was really good for the developers. They're very happy. Code inspection approach also. Earlier, our code inspection approach was that every piece of code that is written gets inspected, reviewed, approved, etc. A lot of it was very redundant. It was very bureaucratic. It wasn't really adding any value. So we really looked at it and took a call that a lot of the code inspection that will happen will be done in a different way. One, the developers will have the autonomy, and they'll be empowered to decide when they would like to have experts reviewing their code. In general, we also started encouraging a lot more peer code reviews, going into a room, walking through your code. These are the kind of things that really generate good code inspection comments. And these are things that we started doing. So it is lightweight and it's also relevant. Not every piece of code, I'm writing a small change to something, I don't need to get it approved by my seniors. So this is something that we changed. It also meant changing the workflow in some of our workflow management tools, etc., and we did that. UT defect logging. So again, earlier, every unit test defect had to be logged. One, because then I could say that, oh, I had identified this and it's not an escaping defect, etc. Some of it was just, covering your bases. But some of it was just procedural. I need it for this documentation, the artifact needs to be shown, etc. So a lot of these things were simplified. The teams had the autonomy to decide whether they want to log their UT defects or not, whether it adds value to them, whether it helps them learn or not. So every Scrum team today operates differently. Some of them log it, some of them don't, they use different tools for it, and it's perfectly fine because nobody else really needs to know about it. So a lot more empowerment and autonomy for the Scrum teams to take some of these decisions.
I just want to give one thought on this. So on the first 3 items, now coming from a very traditional setup, the first 3 were probably easier for the developers, but were very, very hard for the management, very hard. It's because, okay, let's say the change management leaders think about like this, but when it goes to the field, the middle management, it required a lot of work with the middle management to buy in them for this approach, to convince them that it will work, and so on. So it is a lot of effort that needs to happen at the middle management level, and not just with the change leaders.
Absolutely. In general, the software packages, which is something which is delivery ready, started being delivered much more frequently, which basically meant that earlier engagement of the downstream, different kinds of work streams opening up earlier, etc. So these are things that we started doing which changed the way we were working on a day-to-day basis. It also meant that all the technology changes that we did really helped us to actually start delivering value a little earlier. So we started seeing real results, very tangible results pretty soon. Frequent check-ins. So we put all this fancy, expensive CI framework in place, but our developers were not checking code in. So none of that was getting used. So it was a very ridiculous situation where we did a lot of work and it never got operated. So we had to do a lot of things to change the way developers were developing code, and also to encourage them to check in stuff every day. Okay, and now we are at a place where we're asking them to check in code several times a day. So it was a big, big effort, and we did some things around it, and we'll talk about it later, I believe, some gamification around it, etc. And now our developers also know that if I have a machine which is really going to help me, I need to use it first, right? Stop the line, I think, pretty popular in the CI world, but we took a slightly different approach to it. So one, stop the line is really crucial. If you want to have CI, stop the line thinking has to be there. But we didn't want to take a very hard stand on it, and we didn't really stop the check-ins. But something beautiful happened that, our culture is now such that when people see that the build is broken or Jenkins is not green, they themselves do not check in more code. There is this, everybody is coming together to actually try and fix the build. So we didn't really have to take that stand that, no more check-ins, go like a policeman and say, I lock everything. We didn't have to do that, but instead we worked a lot on the culture, we worked a lot with our developers, and we also took a nicer approach to the way we were going to the developers. We weren't saying that, why did you break the build? It was not a blame game at all. It was more about helping them understand what happens when they break the build and how they need to really react to it quickly.
Right. I would say, it's basically it is a combination. So while we did try to build the culture of not blaming the developer and so on, I think for anybody in the initial period, it is important to build the discipline, and building the discipline would mean that everybody is talking to the developer who fails the build, and they are encouraged that they don't check in code at 6 p.m. or 5:45 p.m. when they are about to leave. Because if the build is going to take half an hour and you already checked in at 5:45, you have to run for your bus at 6:15, you will leave the build red. Now, initially, some of the places, probably Vinaya is too nice, we did go to the extent that we called back people from their buses, from their homes, to build a culture. This is about building a discipline. Okay, and eventually as we evolved much better, it didn't require doing many of these things. And because people started understanding this, people read about it on the net, and they figured out that it is in their best interest to actually not check in late, so that they have time to recover something that they happened, or at least roll back. So one of the things which we encouraged was to roll back. If you cannot fix the build because of whatever reason, at least roll back your sources so that other people can check in and move ahead.
Interestingly, I saw mails from developers talking about Jidoka. Jidoka is from the Toyota production system. That is where the whole stop the line thinking comes. And our developers are sending mails about, oh, I read about Jidoka and that's where Stop the Line is coming from. It was phenomenal, you know, we were really happy to see that.
I'll move. Yes.
Do you want to talk about gamification?
Okay, so one of the few things we did, so one of the things is we tried to bring in a lot of gamification to make it fun, because you know this is where you are working with the development community. So it is two fronts, I would say. One is working with the developers, the other is working with the middle management. Especially in our kind of an organization, we are even now, as of now, we are a very traditional hierarchical organization. So the middle management is really influential. If they want to make something happen, they can happen. And the developer, if you can convince, it is the best. So we worked on both these fronts. So for the developer level, gamification, CI competitions, we had dashboards which were measuring how many times they were checking in a day in a fun way, not like only to declare winners. The whole concept of gamification. We are not punishing those who cannot do, but you are rewarding those who are showing a certain level of excellence. So you are encouraging positive behavior. So we had dashboards which measured things like a number of check-ins a day, then people who are passing the build much more frequently, you know, or people who are if their build fails, the recovery is much faster and not leaving, you know. So many of these things which you cannot measure per individual, per developer also. So what we are doing is typically measuring what we call per application or per product. And those kind of reports would go to the management. The middle management is, one manager could be typically responsible for one product. So they strive to keep their applications green and, you know, healthy and so on. And eventually it takes time, it took us a long time. And I would not say it is still perfect, but so we'll talk about later the sustain part of it. So it is some effort. So you have to work on both fronts. With a developer, you cannot be heavy-handed, because then they will stop check-ins, which is a negative challenge. Because if you will really be heavy-handed with the developers, they will just say, okay, build will never fail, because nothing is getting checked in. So you want to encourage them to check in daily, frequently, and so on, and handle things as they fail.
Maybe I can share this incident where the first implementation of CI in a really big project. So the first time it failed, I saw the leader of the account, you know, really senior guy, walking over to the developer, and I was thrilled. I was like, wow, this guy is going and talking to him. But later I came to know that he went and said, how could you break the build and things like that. So then we had to go and tell him that, you know, the guy who's breaking the build is the guy who's checking things in. So we really had to work with our leaders as well. So it's great that they're going and talking to the developers, but what they're saying is also important. So we had to do a little bit of coaching there.
10 minutes.
Okay. In terms of people, I think I also mentioned it before that our developers were at the center of this whole big transition, and that was really something new for us. Also, we started viewing them as craftsmen. I think the Agile community is quite familiar with this, but I think we started seeing them as less people who should be handed over a list of tasks that do this today, and they were allowed to have more influence over their code, over the design, over their day-to-day destiny, so to speak, okay? So really the way developers were being viewed was different, and because of that, a lot of programs we were running, the nature of those programs also changed significantly. For example, the developer engagement, we spoke about the gamification. So these were new ideas for us because we were trying now to influence a different group of individuals. Improving the developer productivity. So if you'll walk into Amdocs today, the best machines are with the developers, which should be the case, but it was something again which happened with time. So our developers are being given a lot of good tools, a lot of technology, a lot of coaching. They get sent to all these cool conferences. They go for really good trainings and workshops. We engage technical coaches to come and guide them. So we're doing a lot of things to really help them upgrade their skills and also be more productive on a day-to-day
Right.
basis.
So one of the things, a newer program which we will probably start soon is something called as 10x development. So we are starting to look at what 10x development is and how it can be applied to in this kind of a context and adapt it and so on. So we want the developer to be the heart of the whole operations, and then you are operating, and then you will get the benefits that you want.
Right, and one more big change, I think it's probably not very common, but we had a quality organization, a lot of quality engineers, etc., who were monitoring, tracking, ensuring quality is built in, etc. We disbanded that team. We don't have a quality organization anymore.
We have few people, but they are very thin.
Right, they're only for monitoring at a larger, very far removed, I would say. Quality is everybody's responsibility. We made this very, very obvious by disbanding that team. So we expect every developer, every tester, every manager, every leader to be the owner of quality. So it's really about building quality in. It's nobody else's business. It's every single person's business in Amdocs.
So no one else is checking. It's you're the team which is checking. So that is why they will become responsible. Short of time, we will move a bit faster. So this is our latest stack. When we started initially, we had a few things only in it. Now, right now, we commit code. It goes to version control, which is Perforce. Jenkins is our orchestrator. Build is Maven. We do a lot of testing on with the JUnits, Jasmine, and all these things. Nexus is used for code metrics. Of course, we have Sonar for many of the products. For some products, we cannot use Sonar. Example, when you have things like Hadoop and you have Pig, there is nothing available. We are trying to integrate security. Security is typically done at the end of this cycle. We're trying to integrate it into CI. A lot of database changes. Database is typically much harder to handle in a CI cycle. Also, in our case, because we have a lot of in-house tools of how we manage the schema. So we are trying to see how we can build feedback on this also into the CI cycle. So any database changes, any schema changes, also the developer will know immediately. Right now, the developer knows it only once a day. The nightly process can handle schema changes. The hourly process or the CI process cannot handle database, but we are working on that. And of course, we are working on deployment and environment as a service using Dockers and all of this to create the ability that at the end of a CI build, probably we can actually already prepare software which is shippable in its full sense, which means it is Dockerized, containerized, and so on. And if somebody wants, they can take it. Now, in our industry, as of now, nobody wants it, but we want to be few years ahead before somebody starts asking for it.
So maybe we won't really talk about each in the interest of time, but some of our tips and tricks, you can see it later in the slides. I'm supposing they'll be shared. So there were cases where some of our teams were more diligent about CI, they were checking in stuff, etc., not breaking the build, whereas the rest of them weren't. So over time, you can imagine the frustration for this team, they stopped doing it as well. So it has to be the whole system that moves forward. It cannot be individual teams alone trying to do something. So those were things we had to deal with. Daily check-ins are a must. I think I spoke about that. UT automation targets, I really want to talk about this. When we started out and we really wanted unit test automation to happen, we started with setting targets. We'll have 70% code coverage for unit test automation. Developers are really smart. They just gamed the metric completely. So we had 70% coverage, but they were completely useless test cases, right? So we realized that the targets are just driving people to also invest a lot of time doing this wasteful activity. So we had to again change tags, and we said that, okay, the targets are not important. We would rather see a qualitative analysis and see how it helps you. So we had to actually do away with these automation targets. We felt it was really, really negative. We saw some really bad behavior based on that. CI is of course useless without automation, the kind of speed we are talking about. Without automation, it's meaningless. Stop the line is critical. How you approach it, maybe there are different things that you can try in your organization and different approaches may work. Focus on clean code will go a long way. Do you want to talk about this?
Clean code, yes, so clean code is the essence. You know, if you don't have clean code, if you don't have atomic methods and all of this stuff, nothing of this will work. So you need to work with your developers on that technical level to really write good code. I mean, at the end of the day, there is no alternative to good code. You can have all the infrastructure, but nothing will be really beneficial if people are not writing good, high quality code.
Right. And rely more on builds and not hot fixes or patches, etc. As long as you have these alternate ways of being able to push code into production or into UAT, people are still going to rely on those methods. So sometimes it's a good idea to just take away these crutches. And then they only have one way of doing it, which is the right way of doing it. So we had to do away with some of our earlier processes, which were sort of hangover from the past. So over time, we got rid of them, and we see people doing the right thing because they have no option sometimes. The last one, I think, is again very important. In our organization, we have middle management, which is really good. They are veterans. They've grown from the field. They are experts in their domains. They're really good technology and technical experts as well. Whenever you start with an agile implementation or you're focusing so much on the developers, it's very easy to alienate them. Also to demonize them, to say, oh, manager, okay, you know, he'll say this, he'll waste my time, etc. But these guys, in our change management approach, they've been real partners for us, and places where we've been able to influence our middle managers, these are the teams who have adopted the practices in the true sense. So I would really, really say that do not alienate them. They can be your partners in change, and they are really good. They just need to be fit into this new world, and they do it very easily as well. So I think it has been a big learning for us. When we started also, it was like, what do we do with the managers? You know, that is the first question that you come with. But over time, we find that they've been our real partners and really crucial partners in making the change happen.
Right. So all of this is good, but you need to sustain this change because people are busy with routine deliveries, and there is pressure, and there is all of these things. So what we focused on was trying to introduce a lot of gamification and ongoing workshops with the teams to keep the motivation high, to keep the focus high, because people are also thirsty for newer and newer things. So you have to feed them. And when you feed them advanced stuff, they will make sure that they are continuing to have focus on the basic stuff and so on. So I think the change, one thing which we have to realize is it is going to be always changing from now on. And so people will need a constant feeder, a constant reminder that, you know, we have to advance, we have to do things better, and so on. So this is something which we are doing a lot for sustaining. Last, this slide basically shows our roadmap. It was not built like this when we started, but this is where we see ourselves now. At the enterprise level and the kind of software that we have, we don't know anybody else. At least I am not aware who is aspiring for continuous delivery, which means that, you know, to be able to deliver on every check-in to production, especially in large scale telco kind of software. So we started with 2013, and so today we are doing few stuffs. As you can see, a lot of the technologies now, these kind of technologies are typically very common in startups and so on, but in enterprise software, in a fully integrated suite, it is not very common, which we are aspiring for, and a lot of it is already in place. So we are happy about it. And what it does for us is it creates for our developers a very cool environment to work in.